Hi, I'm Caitlin Hepworth and this is Mosaic Arts Online. In this course, I'm going to take you on a journey into sculptural mosaics. I'm going to show you the steps needed to create this undulating, twisting, three-dimensional mosaic leaf. We are going to start our journey with looking for inspiration. We're going to find inspiration in the natural world. We're going to collect leaves, we're going to look at poetry, and we're going to look at special objects to get our ideas and to create a mood board to start with. This is going to become a springboard for us throughout the process. The next step is to investigate our idea through drawing. I'm going to show you that you do not need to be an artist in order to use drawing as an investigative tool to iron out ideas in your compositional plan. From our drawing, we step into model making, and we are going to make two separate models. The first one is going to be using modeling clay, and the second one we are going to use make a small model in wire. From here, we learn to use some very basic math to scale up our model, and we also use some photography to investigate our models from different angles and to use photography to evaluate our idea and to see whether we're on the right track with our form. So from here we scale our model up and we create a substrate, and our substrate is going to be suitable for external lasting display. We make our substrate out of a steel mesh as well as some fiberglass mesh as well as thin set. We bring those things together and to create the substrate for this form. That's the first part of the course. The second part of the course looks at really mosaicing the form and how to go about that. So here we start by investigating colour. So we look at the colour wheel and we look at the value card, and we develop a colour palette and a colour sampler that refers to value and investigates how the colours are going to work together to support our actual intention or our inspiration. Once we've developed our colour palette, we also then look at our thin set colours or our thin set values, and we look at whether we go with dark thin set, medium thin set or light thin set, and we create a sampler which you can see here, which we refer to throughout the mosaicing process. And the next thing we do before we mosaic is we actually investigate undermento, and I take you through some steps that show you how to plan and draw up your undermento in a number of ways, from very simple undermento to stoppiamento to some more creative applications of undermento. So we do that all before we start to mosaic. So then we go about mosaicing our form. So we are using tinted thin set, and we are using as our tesserae, we are using Italian smalti as well as Mexican smalti as well as oro. And I show you all the tips and tricks needed to mosaic the three-dimensional form, how to turn, how to support, how to clean, and how to get a resolved and beautiful product at the end of the course. I cannot wait to go on this journey with you, and I cannot wait to see what you create.
Caitlin, thank you so much for coming to Mosaic Arts Online. Wow, all the way from Australia. What an honor and a privilege.
Thanks, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed every minute of this time that we've spent together. It's been wonderful.
Well, we have something amazing that you've created over the last few days. So tell us a little bit more, though, before we get into this, how you did get started in mosaic art.
Well, I have always been creative, Tammy, since I was a child. Once I finished school, I went off to study fine arts. I did a sculpture degree with a sculpture major and drawing minor, and that really introduced me to three dimensions, and I just loved it straight away. From there I went on to study a postgraduate degree in visual arts, visual arts education, and I was a high school teacher for many years in visual arts. During that time I did start to mosaic, but as most people do, I started on a two-dimensional plan, which I loved and I learned a lot. But my real aha moment happened when I realized that I could actually bring my sculptural training together with my love of mosaic and create three-dimensional sculptures, and that was my light bulb moment, and I have not stopped since.
But you have been doing this for a little while, and that's what you are known for, is your sculptural mosaics. And if you can go to CaitlinHepworth.com, you will see just an array of your amazing work. So give me a little bit more background of how that has become really your anchor in your mosaic art career.
Well, Tammy, I have found that for me to express my ideas, I really need to work in 3 dimensions. And I do think that there's something really quite beautiful that happens when a mosaic is 3-dimensional. And I teach you a little bit about that in this course. But I want to integrate the mosaic and the form really well. And to do that, the form needs to be valid in its own right without the mosaic. So I do spend a lot of time in this course talking about the development of the form and how the form needs to be solid. I love the form on its own, but then I love the mosaic to add that extra layer of something, to add meaning, to add reflectivity, to express my intention in a greater way than the form alone. So it is my passion to teach people about that, and to teach people to actually look at sculpture and mosaic in a different way, and to look at sculptural mosaic in a different way. Instead of thinking about it as an object with mosaic stuck on the outside of it, how the mosaic and the sculpture become one thing.
Yes, and you do talk a lot about that in this course, and you really do get 2 courses for the price of 1 here, because you can learn how to make her sculpture, which you're going to go into a little bit more detail now, and then all of the parts that create the mosaic on top of it. So it's pretty incredible. Can you give a little more behind the scenes of a little bit of the tools and materials that they will be using to do both the sculpture part and the mosaic?
Okay, sure. So it's all pretty straightforward, and most of the tools are available readily at your hardware store or your mosaic supplier. So we start with a mood board, and then we get into some drawing, which is basically pencils and paper. Then we move into modelling. So we've got some modelling clay down here from the craft store, and we also use some wire mesh, which you can get from your hardware store or your tiling store. To work with that, we need to use some gloves for safety for our hands, and some tin snips, again readily available. So really that's probably the most physical part of it, is cutting the mesh and then manipulating the mesh, which can be a little sharp, so we always wear gloves. From here we have thin set. We mix our thin set and we use a basic spatula to apply it with our fibre mesh to our form, and that's how we develop our substrate. Once we get into the mosaic element, we are using our nippers. So most people will be familiar with the wheeled nippers. Either the Leponit nippers would be fine, or the Montolet nippers would be fine for the smulty. I also do use a Hammer and Hardy, and I do some faceting of the smulty, but you don't have to do that. You can use what you have available. You can also create your mosaic with materials that are not smulty, such as ceramic or stained glass or vitreous glass or china, and you could use the cutting tools appropriate for those materials. We also use some rotation devices. So this is actually a Lazy Susan that we use to turn our mosaic around. If you do have access to a ceramic studio, you could use a banding wheel, or simply put your mosaic elevated and be able to turn it, because it's very important to keep examining the sculptural form from multiple angles and not just one view, because it is not just seen from one view. As you move around the sculpture, you see it from all different angles, and it's really important to work on it and evaluate it in that way, Tammy.
Yeah, it's incredible, and there really are so many elements to creating the sculpture that you go over, in the way that it's going to sit at the table and the way that it's going to reflect the different colors. So you really cover so much in both of these, and anyone that is excited to get started in sculpture, this is a great course. You do not need to be experienced. Like Caitlin said, you can have use materials that are not smulty if that is something that you're more comfortable with, but what you have to have is a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of excitement to get into this sculptural thing, but it is absolutely achievable at any level.
and I look forward to seeing how people take this in their own direction. I am showing you the steps and the technique of how to do this.
Yes.
But Tammy, one of the things I really love to see is how students take that skill and take it sideways or take it in another direction completely and make it their own. And I really look forward to seeing what everybody produces, and please do share it with me.
Yes, and thank you so much for coming to Mosaic Arts Online. We are just so thrilled to have this technique and from the expert.
Thanks, Tammy. It's
Yay.
been great.
Awesome.